So you're here at the New York Stock Exchange for our annual Space Summit. Why was it important that you attended this year?
Growing and building the capabilities for space is expensive. And so a lot of times you need to look at where the sources of that capital come from. Now, obviously, in an early stage company, you look at venture capitalists to help get the company started. But eventually you need to tap the public markets. And the stock exchange obviously has a great history of providing that liquidity for companies like ours.
So from a strategic standpoint and from your vantage point, how would you say the combination, the public and the private sector, have really impacted the way that you do business?
You've got to find a way to serve both, and that's not actually easy. So when you look at the defense markets, often they want fairly, they like this word, exotic technologies. And that's not necessarily something you'd sell on the commercial markets, right? It's something that you're going to build 100 of is different than something that the Space Force wants one of. And so finding a way to kind of thread that needle and say we're going to build enough of the capability we can serve both of these markets with a similar product is challenging, but I think that's what you need to do to navigate this market today, because you can't just have a vision of how we're going to go to Mars or the moon or something fantastical like that. You need to find ways to build business along the way.
But you know, when you're dealing with the public sector, right, government agencies, things kind of tend to take a little bit longer, right? So, I mean, do you see that the private sector could be beneficial in this case?
Yeah, it sort of depends on which place we're looking at. So I think Space Force has made a lot of inroads. I mean, they just had their 5-year anniversary, and they made a lot of inroads in trying to procure more rapidly, to be an agency that can respond more quickly, can kind of cut through some of that bureaucratic red tape. Now, there's only so much they can do. They have defense primes that are kind of pseudo-government agencies that are entrenched in those businesses, but they're trying to really get to more commercial procurement needs. Every single meeting we ever have with somebody at Space Force, they say things like, we want to procure a commercial product, we want to procure in a commercial way, we want to get one off the line. You know, these sort of things where they're showing that they want to be in business like a commercial procurer would. It's challenging, right? Because that's not the lineage they come from, that's not how they typically procure, but they're definitely trying. And we see that, you know, we see how quickly they can get some things to bear, and they know they need to do that to respond to emerging threats.
What would you say is your biggest focus right now in the space sector from a business standpoint?
So we've got to sell more to those two markets. You know, when I look at how I spend my time, where my team is focused, it's really on, we need to have a credible business as we grow. The exciting thing about space is that people want to be in it because they want to go to the moon or want to go to Mars or want to do something like that. And that vision, I think, creates a lot of enthusiasm in space, brings a lot of talent into space, which is fantastic. But we don't get to those places unless we have a business along the way. And the customers we're going to sell to are really telecommunications and defense. And so we have to have a credible business while we get to those more sci-fi future things.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Taking Stock.
Thanks for having me.